As the world slowly reopens, many of us are going back to our old routines, and it feels more important than ever to organize our time in a way that doesn't compromise what matters most.
And our next guest has some advice on how to think about time management in a completely different way. And it's all outlined in his book, 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals. Welcome to the show, Oliver Burkeman.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's good to be here.
Great. Okay, I'm going to start with the obvious. I mean, I absolutely love the title, 4,000 Weeks. What does it exactly mean?
Well, that is in a very rough terms the number of weeks that you have if you live to be the average age in the West. If you live to be 80, you'll have had a few more than 4,000, but not that many more. It's all pretty terrifyingly finite. So that's what I wanted to try and get across in that title.
And wow, do you ever know that I know what it means?
Yeah.
Holy smokes. Well, listen, Oliver, the last couple of years have undoubtedly been tough for all of us, but you say that we can use this experience to explore how our happiness and overall wellness are taking a back seat to work and responsibilities. Tell us about that.
Well, obviously, what's happened the last couple of years has been terrible in all sorts of different ways, and I don't want to undermine that at all. But I do think that this kind of moment when everything changes in the way that it did in lockdown, it can be an amazing opportunity to sort of question assumptions that we just things we just thought had to be the way they were. And plus, we've come to see that we have such sort of we live in such an uncertain world. We don't really seem to know what's going to be happening a month from now. I think a lot of people are seeing that you can use that as an opportunity to maybe the thing that you've been waiting to do for decades or years, maybe you have to do that now, really. If there's something that you care about in your life, maybe now is the time to make that change instead of deferring to some future that, never seems to arrive.
Or maybe doesn't. Yeah, you're right. Okay, so for a while now, being busy has been really considered to be a badge of honor. I mean, I get that. It's something we all aspire to, and we tell ourselves that, we want to be busy. But you think that that can be a damaging way of thinking.
I mean, it's completely amazing if you look at it in historical perspective that we think of busyness as something to boast about. It's become something to boast about because when you do well at work, when you get a promotion, when you rise up the ladder, you end up being busier than before. So naturally, people sort of talk about it as something good that's happened to them. But the idea, at any point until about 200 years ago, the idea that by being successful in life, what you would be rewarded with is even more to do, or you would feel sort of this overwhelm, this sense that there's more that you that you have to do than that you can do. It's completely absurd, and I think we need to sort of consciously try to step out of that groove we get into, where people ask how you're doing, and you say, "Oh, busy," as if it's a great thing.
I love that. So
having lots to do is great. Having too much to do is not great. Yeah.
That's so true. And it's the right things, too.
It's the right things.
It's working
to
on
do,
the right things. Yeah.
But even if we don't aspire to be a busybody, many of us have this constant feeling that we can and should is that word, should do more. But you're suggesting that we actually do less in order to make the most of our time. Tell us about that.
I think one of the things we fail to understand about being finite creatures, in a world of infinite inputs, infinite potential emails, infinite potential places to go, experiences to have, demands that people can make, we forget that there's always going to be too much to do, both of a sort of good kind and the kind of tedious stuff that we wish we didn't have to do. There's always going to be too much of it. So if you live your life in this stance that you're going to try to get on top of all of it, you're going to get to the point where you're so efficient and so in control of everything that you can handle everything that's thrown at you. That's just mathematically, you're not going to get there. You're going to be constantly climbing this mountain to get to a summit that, there just is no summit. So I think that actually to be the most effective people we can be, certainly the most fulfilled in our own lives, but actually to be the most helpful to other people as well and to be of the most service. The thing to do is to acknowledge this reality and then kind of pour your time and attention and energy into a handful of things that really matter, instead of this utterly futile attempt to become superhuman, basically, which is what it is, I think.
Okay, so I have sort of a two-part question now for you, Oliver. So the one thing that plagues me is the nagging email, the inbox. It goes up, and the idea of ever getting it back down almost seems impossible. But you seem to be one of those rare people, even though we've just been talking about it, that you have achieved the elusive inbox zero. But can you tell us how you feel about that being a futile goal? And you just also mentioned, I've always thought it's not time management, it's energy management. I like to go, 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 go fast, but then recover hard as well.
Yeah, I think that's really wise. The thing about inbox zero, yeah, and you have the high honor to be in the presence of somebody who achieved that, right? But it's not all it's cracked up to be, because all all that happens if you get really, really good at processing email really fast is you just get tons more email, because you reply to more people's replies and they reply to you, and it's like they say, the reward for good time management is more work, and so it's actually not a super great tactic to be really, really effective at answering email, because you will just get even more overwhelmed by it. Mm-hmm. That point you make about energy management is so true. Despite the subtitle of my book having the words time management in it, you can't really manage time. It's actually a really strange philosophical notion to think that we could ever manage time. What you can do is you can sort of work with the limitations that you have, and that includes energy, trying to sort of pour your focus into those times when you have the energy for the kind of task you're trying to do. So a point I love making, anybody who works with their brains primarily, a little bit different for people who work in with their hands and in more manual work, but anyone who sits at a desk and thinks about things and types things and writes things for a living, you can't do more than about 3 or 4 hours effective work of that kind in an unbroken way. Like, you just can't. It's kind of been shown again and again and again. Now, you probably have to stay if you're working in an office, you probably can't just leave after 4 hours. But actually, not demanding more of yourself than about 3 or 4 really focused hours of hard thinking in a day, that's a good tactic for getting more done over the long term, because you don't burn out, you don't get to the point where you're depleted. Do less, you actually will be more productive, I think.
Hey, Oliver, your book highlights 10 tools for embracing your finitude. And the one that caught my eye is, and I love this, decide in advance what to fail at. What's the idea behind this?
Well, the logic here just is, because we're all finite, because there's so much more we could do than that we will do, that we'll get around to doing, you're going to fail at a bunch of stuff. If you have all the goals and ambitions that most of us have, some of those are going to go well, and some of them you're not going to get time for. So a really good way to avoid some of the stress of this situation is just to decide, for the next 6 months or for the next year, I am just not going to succeed in keeping a tidy house. The garden is not going to look lovely. One that I did, I really want to get better at cooking, but you know what? I don't want it enough, apparently, compared to my other goals, because it just never happened. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be a good cook for the next 5 years. Maybe then, when my son is a little bit older, I'll have that time. Who knows? And if you decide that in advance, it's not disappointing when you get to the end of that period and, hey, you didn't do that thing, because that's what you were expecting. You weren't demanding it of yourself. And again, it's good to go easy on yourself, but it's also a really good way to make sure you really do excel in the other things, the things you decide not to fail at right now. So, it all works out, I think.
I cannot wait to make my list of what I'm going to fail at. I'm going to do it tonight. Oliver, it's been so great chatting with you. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
The book is called 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals. Be sure to check it out, and we'll be right back.